Take a walk across your yard for me. Not a quick glance from the porch. I mean, actually look down. How many little dirt volcanoes are sitting out there right now? One by the walkway, another beside the flower bed. One dead center in the patch of grass your kids run through barefoot. Maybe two more forming near the back fence where there were none a few days ago. And if you've been pretending they're not a big deal, I get it. Most people do. They step around them. They mow over them. Maybe they hit them with a spray and call it handled. Then 3 days later, the mound is back, the grass is worse, and somehow it feels like the ants won. That's the part nobody tells you. Ant hills are not just little piles of dirt making your lawn look messy. They're active damage. Every mound is a sign that something underneath your grass is being disturbed, loosened, lifted, and reshaped in a way your lawn cannot keep tolerating forever. And if the ants you're dealing with happen to be fire ants, now it's not just ugly. Now it's a safety problem. Because the second that mound gets disturbed by a mower wheel, a dog's paw, a kid's foot, or your own hand trying to scrape it flat, those ants come up fast. Most homeowners don't realize they're fighting the same battle the wrong way, over and over. You see the mound, you knock it down, you spray the top, you watch ants scatter. Maybe you feel good for a few minutes because the surface goes quiet. Then by tomorrow morning there's movement again. New traffic, fresh soil. Another raised patch in the same spot like nothing ever happened. That's because what you hit wasn't the colony. It was the front desk, the workers, the exposed part, the visible part. The actual problem is still underground, organized, protected, rebuilding while you're putting the hose away. And today I'm going to show you why that keeps happening. Why most ant products only give you the illusion of control, and how one simple white powder can take out the entire mound without relying on the kind of synthetic chemical cocktail most people assume is necessary. But there's one more twist here, and it's the part most people don't believe until they see it in their own yard. After the ants are gone and the mound breaks down, the grass in that spot often comes back stronger than the grass around it. Not just recovered, better, fuller, darker, denser. One treatment doing two jobs sounds ridiculous until you understand what's actually going on. And no, this is not magic. It just looks like magic if no one ever explained the mechanism to you. Before I tell you what the powder is, you need to understand why ant hills mess up a lawn so badly in the first place. Because if all you see is a dirt bump on the surface, you're missing the real damage. The mound is only the part above ground. The real work is happening below it. Ants don't create that pile out of nowhere. They excavate soil from the root zone. They dig chambers, tunnels, pockets, routes, and the dirt they remove gets stacked on top. That means the soil structure under your grass is being disrupted right where the roots are supposed to stay anchored, fed, and in contact with moisture. So now you've got two problems happening at the same time. The first is underneath. The roots below the mound lose the tight soil contact they need. Air gaps form. Moisture movement changes. Nutrient access gets weaker. That patch of grass starts losing its stability. The second problem is on top. The mound itself covers and presses on the grass already there. Light gets blocked. Airflow gets reduced. Then the mower comes along and scalps the raised area because the blade catches high. That's when you get that ugly shaved brown scar in the middle of an otherwise decent lawn. One mound here and there may not destroy your whole yard, but lawns rarely stop at one. They become clusters, then repeat clusters, then a pattern. And once you start seeing new mounds every week, your yard stops looking maintained and starts looking like it's being slowly taken over. If you're dealing with fire ants, the emotional pressure gets even worse because you're not just frustrated anymore. You're on edge. You start warning kids where not to step. You watch pets wander too close. You stop trusting your own grass. That's a completely different psychological burden than a basic cosmetic issue. Now here's where most homeowners get pushed into the same expensive cycle. They buy a spray that promises instant kill. And it does kill instantly. For the ants it touches, that's the trap. Kills on contact sounds powerful, but it's a very limited promise. Contact only happens where the spray lands. The queen is not up there. The deeper colony chambers are not up there. The reproductive engine is not up there. So what did you really solve? You punished the employees and left management in place. By the time the visible ants are gone, the colony is already replacing them. Baits can work better than sprays in some situations, but they come with their own weakness. They depend on the colony accepting and distributing the bait. That means you're relying on ant behavior to cooperate with your plan. Some colonies do, some don't. Sometimes there are competing food sources. Sometimes the bait dries out. Sometimes it gets ignored. Sometimes the colony samples it cautiously. In other words, you're still playing a game on their terms. The powder I want to show you works in a completely different way, and that difference is the whole reason it's so effective. It doesn't attack the ants chemically first. It attacks them physically, mechanically, which means the insects are not being asked to eat it, trust it, or mistake it for food. They just have to touch it. And if they touch it, the process begins. The powder is diatomaceous earth, food-grade diatomaceous earth. If you've never used it before, it looks unimpressive. Fine, pale, almost like chalk dust. Nothing about it visually screams, this will wipe out an active ant mound. That's one reason people underestimate it. But under magnification, it's a completely different story. Diatomaceous earth is made from fossilized microscopic aquatic organisms called diatoms. Their remains are rich in silica, and when processed into powder, what you get is not soft fluff in the way most people imagine. You get an enormous field of tiny abrasive fragments. To us, it feels light. To an insect, it's something else entirely. Ants are protected by a thin outer layer that helps retain moisture. Think of it like a microscopic protective coat that keeps their bodies from drying out. When they travel through dry diatomaceous earth, those particles stick to them. The abrasive edges damage that protective outer layer, not with a dramatic movie-style effect, not instantly, quietly, progressively. The insect starts losing moisture faster than it can compensate. It dehydrates. And because that process is physical, not a biochemical poison pathway, there's no clever adaptation that turns sharp mineral particles into harmless fluff. The mechanism stays the mechanism. That slow kill is exactly why it spreads so effectively. If ants dropped dead the second they touched it, you'd only get surface casualties. But they don't. They keep moving. They go back down into the colony. They brush against each other. They pass through narrow tunnels. They move food. They move larvae. They move around the queen. And with every bit of contact, those particles get carried deeper into the system you actually want to collapse. That's why this works so differently from the homeowner methods that seem satisfying in the moment but fail by the next day. And that still only explains the pest control side of the story. It doesn't explain why the lawn sometimes rebounds so well afterward. This is the part that makes the entire method feel almost unfair in the best way. Diatomaceous earth is largely silica. And silica is one of those things a lot of homeowners never think about because it's not marketed as aggressively as nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium. But turf can benefit from silica in very real ways. It contributes to stronger plant structure. It helps blades handle stress better. It can support tolerance to heat and wear. And in many grasses, improved silica availability is associated with stronger overall vigor and denser growth habits over time. So what happens after treatment is surprisingly elegant. First, the colony declines and stops constantly rebuilding the mound. Second, the raised soil begins to settle because there are no active ants maintaining the structure anymore. Third, irrigation and rain gradually move the mineral into the upper soil area. Fourth, the grass that was once being smothered or destabilized gets a chance to recover in a better environment than it had while the colony was active. No more constant disturbance. No more active excavation. Less stress. More room to rebound. That doesn't mean every treated spot turns into a supernatural patch overnight. But it does mean the place that looked ruined can recover faster, and sometimes end up looking better than you expected. And that is an incredibly satisfying result psychologically, because you're not just removing a nuisance, you're reclaiming a damaged area and watching it improve. Now let me show you how to actually use it correctly, because the method matters. If you have visible mounds, the simplest approach is direct mound treatment. On a dry day, take about a cup of food-grade diatomaceous earth and dust the mound so the entire top is covered in a thin, obvious layer. Then use something narrow like a screwdriver, stake, or stick to make several holes into the mound. You're not trying to flatten it. Don't stomp it. Don't smash it. Don't scatter it. You want to open access points while keeping the colony structure in place. After you make the holes, add more powder into those openings so active ants moving through upper chambers have repeated contact with it. That last part is important. Homeowners often want to destroy the mound immediately because it feels decisive. But if you wreck the mound right away, you reduce the organized traffic pattern that helps move the powder through the colony. It feels satisfying but works against the deeper objective. You're not trying to win an argument with the mound. You're trying to let the colony carry its own problem inward. If you're seeing repeated activity along edges, fence lines, patios, foundations, or entry boundaries between wild areas and your lawn, a perimeter treatment can be useful. A dry line of diatomaceous earth along those crossover zones creates a contact barrier. Ants moving through it pick up particles before they ever establish much of a foothold deeper into the yard. It's not a magical invisible wall, but it is a practical low-cost defense layer during heavy ant season. And if your yard is truly loaded with activity, not just a few isolated mounds, but a pattern across the property, some people choose a light broadcast application over the lawn at a modest rate. Not piles. Not heavy white dust everywhere. A light, controlled amount. Enough to create repeated contact at the surface where ants travel. That approach isn't necessary for everyone, but when infestations are broad, it can help address colonies you haven't noticed yet. Now let me give you the rules that matter, because this is where people mess it up. First, use food-grade diatomaceous earth, not pool-grade. Pool-grade is processed differently and is not what you want for this application. If the label does not clearly indicate food-grade, put it back. Second, apply it dry. Dry is everything here. Once the material is soaked, its effectiveness for insect control drops hard because the fine particles clump and the mechanical action is reduced. Pick a dry window. If heavy rain hits right after application, you may need to repeat it when the area dries back out. Third, don't inhale the dust cloud while applying it. Even food-grade mineral powder is still dust, and dust belongs in the yard, not in your lungs. A basic dust mask during application is a smart move. Fourth, let it settle before letting pets barrel through the area. Once it's down and no longer airborne, the concern changes dramatically. The key caution is during application, not after it has settled naturally into place. Fifth, don't expect a movie scene by sunrise. This is not the instant visual drama of a chemical contact spray. And honestly, that's one reason some people underestimate it too early. They check the mound the next morning, see a little movement, and decide it failed. That's impatience, not evidence. Give it time to work through the colony. Watch what happens over several days, not several hours. Let me tell you how this tends to play out in real life. because the timeline matters. Day 1, you treat the mound. Activity may still look normal. Day 2, you might still see movement, but often the surface behavior starts to look less aggressive or less dense. Day 3 through 5 is where many people notice the real drop. Trails thin out, surface traffic slows, mounds stop being actively rebuilt. By the end of the week, many colonies are dramatically reduced or completely inactive. Stubborn or especially large mounds may need a second application. That is not failure. That's just scale. And here's the satisfying part. Once the colony is no longer maintaining the mound, time starts working for you instead of against you. Rain softens it, irrigation settles it, the raised area relaxes downward. The grass isn't getting buried again every day. The mower stops shaving the same high spot. That ugly, irritating patch finally gets a chance to breathe and rebuild. One of the reasons content like this spreads so hard online is because it gives the homeowner a story they can test quickly. You don't have to wait 6 months to see whether something happened. You can walk outside in a few days and look. That immediate feedback loop is powerful. It creates shares. It creates comments. It creates people coming back to say, I tried this and the mound is dead. Fast visible proof is social fuel. It also helps that the economics are so lopsided. A bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth is inexpensive. Very inexpensive compared to routine pest service visits, repeat specialty sprays, or branded lawn products with huge markup and lots of marketing wrapped around middling performance. That price contrast does more than save money. It creates emotional satisfaction. People love the feeling of outsmarting a system that trained them to overspend. When a cheap mineral outperforms a pricey habit, the homeowner doesn't just feel relieved. They feel sharper. And that's why this kind of script hits such a deep nerve. It's not only solving ants, it's restoring control. People are exhausted by recurring household problems that seem simple but never actually stay solved. Every time you can show someone a mechanism-based answer that is cheap, understandable, and repeatable, you're not just giving them advice. You're giving them back confidence. Now, there are a few questions people always ask, so let's handle them before they turn into hesitation. Does it work on fire ants? Yes. But fire ants can be more stubborn because colonies are often larger and more aggressive. That means the timeline may stretch, and a follow-up treatment can be smart if the mound is still active after several days. Same principle, same mechanism, just sometimes more persistence required. What about carpenter ants? That's a different situation. Carpenter ants often nest in wood, not in lawn soil, so a yard treatment won't solve a nest hidden in a deck, wall, or structural void. If the colony isn't in the soil, you need to address where they're actually living. What about bees and helpful insects? This is where targeted use matters. You don't go dusting flowering plants where pollinators are landing. That's careless. You use the product where the ant problem exists. Mounds, travel lines, boundary zones, problem soil areas. Precision matters more than volume. What about earthworms? Earthworms are generally in moist soil zones, and the material's insect control effect is strongest when dry at the surface where ants are traveling. That's one reason targeted surface use is the smarter approach. What about pets and kids? The main caution is during application, while fine dust is in the air. Once applied properly and settled, the scenario changes a lot. As always, use common sense, read the label, and keep the application clean and controlled. How often do you need to do it? For a direct mound treatment, often once is enough, sometimes twice for larger or more active colonies. For boundary applications during heavy ant season, occasional reapplication may be useful, especially after rain. And now we get to the bigger lesson, because this is bigger than one product and one pest. A lot of lawn problems stay expensive because people never get taught mechanism. They get taught products. Buy this spray, buy this subscription, buy this treatment plan, buy this seasonal package. But when you understand what the problem actually is and what the material is actually doing, a lot of the mystery disappears. The yard becomes less intimidating. You stop reacting emotionally to every new mound and start responding strategically. That shift matters. Because once you learn how to think about your lawn, instead of just how to buy for it, everything gets easier. Brown patch stops being random. Yellowing stops feeling mysterious. Weed pressure stops feeling personal. And ant hills stop being these endlessly recurring little monuments to frustration. They become manageable. If you walked outside right now and counted every mound in your yard, how many would there be? 2, 5, 10, more? Most people don't realize how many they've mentally edited out until somebody makes them actually look. And once you do look, once you see the pattern, you stop accepting it as normal. That's when a video like this becomes powerful. It turns passive annoyance into active correction. So here's the simple version. If ants are building mounds in your lawn, the problem is not just the dirt you can see. The problem is the colony under your turf continuing to undermine the area while your usual quick fixes barely touch the real source. Food-grade diatomaceous earth works because ants only need to walk through it, not eat it, trust it, or choose it. It spreads through movement, weakens them physically, and gives the colony time to carry the problem inward. Meanwhile, once the ants stop rebuilding and the soil begins settling, the grass finally gets a clean chance to recover. That is why such a cheap material can create such a satisfying result. It doesn't just kill what's visible, it interrupts what's recurring. And if you've been spending money on products that make you feel busy without making you feel done, this is one of those rare lawn fixes that can change how you think about the whole game. Because the best yard solutions are usually not the loudest, fanciest, or most heavily advertised. They're the ones that make sense all the way through. Problem, mechanism, application, result. That's what you're looking for. Not hype, not branding, not a temporary feeling of action. A result you can explain. I'm Eli Yoder, and I want you to do one thing. The next time you spot an ant mound in your lawn, don't mow over it. Don't flatten it. Don't pretend it'll disappear on its own. Treat it deliberately. Watch the colony decline, and then watch what the grass does after the activity stops. Because once you see one dead mound settle out and the lawn start filling back in, you stop feeling helpless around this problem forever. And that's really the deeper reason this matters. The lawn care world has trained people to believe every recurring issue requires another expensive intervention, another specialist bottle, another scheduled visit, another advanced formula with a higher price tag than the last one. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes you really do need professional help. But a lot of the time, what you actually need is clear information, a simple material, and the confidence to use it correctly. Ant hills thrive on neglect, misunderstanding, and half measures. Once you remove those three things, they stop feeling unbeatable. So go check your yard. Count the mounds. Handle the ones that are active. Be patient enough to let the method work, and then come back a week later and see whether the lawn is starting to take itself back. Because there are few feelings better for a homeowner than this. The problem looked bigger than you were told. The solution turned out to be simpler than you expected, and the results cost a fraction of what the industry would have charged you to get there.